Hi there, congratulations. We have completed the first project management knowledge area, which was project integration management. The next knowledge area that we are going to talk about is project scope management. So the things will become more interesting now. You will be able to relate these learnings with your day-to-day project management activities, and I'm sure you will enjoy this. So let's get started with project scope management. Project scope management is all about managing the project scope. It includes processes which are required to ensure that the project includes all the required amount of work and only the required amount of work that is needed to complete the project successfully. So this means the project scope defines the project boundaries, what we must do in the project and what we must not do in the project. So let's take an example. Suppose you are a project manager and you have to create a website for your client, and you have agreed with your client that you would be designing 5 pages of the website. The first page would be the home page, the second page would be for the services, third page for the client reviews, fourth page for the product gallery, and fifth page for the contact details. Now, as per the project scope, you must ensure that you are designing all these 5 pages that you have agreed with the client as per the scope. And at the same time, you must also ensure that you are not creating any other additional pages, such as something like payment gateway. So in case you had to design the payment gateway in this website, and in case you were aware of this before you started working on the project, you might have given the higher quotation, you might have considered the higher number of resources or more time for completing this project. So that's why it is important that we stick to the project scope and we do all the required amount of work and only the required amount of work in the project. A project scope management has 6 processes, and those 6 processes are from 2 process groups. So there are 4 processes from planning process group, starting with plan scope management. So it talks about how the scope would be managed throughout the project, and at the end of this process we aim to create a scope management plan, which would be a subsidiary plan for the project management plan. The next is collecting the requirements from the stakeholders, because that will define your scope, what you need to do in the project. The next process is define the scope, in which you define the scope, you create the scope statement. The next is the work breakdown structure. This is the new term, work breakdown structure, or WBS, is decomposition of all the deliverables as per the project scope. And then there are 2 processes from monitoring and controlling process group, starting with the scope validation. So if you remember in the earlier lessons, we briefly talked about this. So at, at the end of the directing and managing project work, we create the deliverables, and those deliverables then would be sent to the quality control, and at the end of the quality control we get the verified deliverables, and those verified deliverables will then be sent to the scope validation process, and at the end of scope validation you get the accepted deliverables. So scope validation is all about having your deliverables accepted by the client. And the last process of this knowledge area is control scope. As we have discussed in this example, we must ensure that we have been doing all the required amount of work and only the required amount of work as per the scope, and that's why we must control the scope. So there are different terminologies which we will be learning in this knowledge area. Project scope is different from the product scope. The product scope is the features and functions that characterize a product, service, or result. That means it includes the tangible features and functions that you can see, you can experience in the product. Whereas the project scope is the required amount of work that you have to do in order to get that product. So that includes how you need to do the activities in your project in order to achieve the product, which is like what you need to do in the project. So that's the difference between the product scope and the project scope. Let's take an example. Suppose you have to build this furnished office. So for that you must have considered which kind of furniture should be there in the office, what should be the color of the furniture, and the type of the material of that would be used, the wooden material and the glass material, and the color of the chairs, and things like that. So that's your product. So that's what you want to achieve in your project. Now in order to do that, there are several activities that you have to do. You have to first of all you have to identify the space for the office, and then you have to identify someone who can build these furnitures for you. Then you have to get these furnitures arranged within the office. So these are the activities that you must do in the project. So that's the project scope, and the functions and features are the product scope. So with this background, let's get started with the processes of project scope management. I will see you in the next lesson. Till that time, take care. Thank you.